You think Viking ship burials were only for bearded warriors? Surprise! The most famous one held 2 women and 15 horses. No warriors at all. So who got a ship burial? Elites. Any gender. They packed everything for the afterlife. Weapons, jewelry, tools, food, even sacrificed humans. It was a journey, not a funeral. Why did Vikings go to such lengths to bury a ship? Because for them, death was a voyage. The ship was not just a coffin, but a vessel to carry the soul to the afterlife. Norse mythology describes the dead journeying to realms like Valhalla, and the ship was their transport. To prepare for that voyage, the ship was loaded with grave goods, weapons, jewelry, tools, food. Animals were sacrificed to accompany their owner. Then the ship was hauled ashore and covered with a mound, creating a launch pad for the soul. What did they pack? A ship full of stuff. The Oseberg ship held a ceremonial wagon, 4 sleighs, and a bed. That's not a burial. That's moving in. But these weren't random trinkets. Oseberg had 15 horses and 4 dogs. Gokstad had 12 horses and 6 dogs. Ladby had 11 horses. That's a lot of companions for the journey. Sometimes the deceased didn't travel alone. At Oseberg, one woman may have been sacrificed to accompany the other. Human sacrifice was rare but real, a grim reminder of the ultimate price. So which ship burial wins? Oseberg held 2 women, one in her 70s, another in her 50s, plus 15 horses, 4 dogs, and a ceremonial wagon. That's a moving van for the soul. Oseberg's women were high status, possibly a queen and her servant. Gokstad's man was a chieftain. Oseberg had luxury travel goods. Gokstad had warrior gear. Same ritual, different priorities. Ship burials were personalized. Oseberg's women prepared for a luxurious journey. Gokstad's chieftain for a warrior's voyage. The ship was the ultimate status symbol, reflecting the deceased's identity. Were ship burials uniquely Viking? Not at all. Sutton Hoo in England, an Anglo-Saxon king buried in a ship decades before the Viking Age. Same idea, different culture. Did Vikings copy the Anglo-Saxons? Not exactly. The tradition was widespread. In Russia, ship burials with Scandinavian goods show cultural diffusion, a shared language of power. Ship burial was a broader Germanic tradition. From England to Russia, elites used the same symbol, a ship to carry them to the afterlife. The ship was a vessel for an idea. Why the trouble? A ship burial was a status symbol. Bigger ship, more animals, louder message. This person was powerful. A lavish burial flexed your wealth. But when Christianity swept Scandinavia, ship burial stopped. The church taught that the soul needed prayer, not a ship. The practice sailed into history, leaving only echoes. But where did this tradition come from? The earliest known ship burials in Scandinavia date back to the Iron Age, around 500 BCE. They started small, just a boat-shaped setting of stones. But by the Viking Age, they had evolved into full-size ships buried under massive mounds. So the ship wasn't just a vehicle, it was a microcosm of the deceased's world. By burying a ship with all its contents, they recreated the person's life on Earth, ensuring they had everything needed in the next world. It was a complete world in miniature. And the ship itself was loaded with symbolism. The prow often featured a dragon or serpent head to ward off evil spirits. The ship was oriented toward the sea, pointing the soul in the right direction. Every detail had meaning. But moving a full-size ship inland was no small feat. The Oseberg ship was 21 meters long and weighed several tons. It had to be dragged from the water, dug into a trench, and covered with stones and earth. This required a huge workforce, making it a public display of power. Not all ship burials involved inhumation. Some Vikings cremated their dead on the ship. The body was placed on a pyre aboard the ship, which was then set alight. The ashes were buried in a mound, sometimes with the charred remains of the ship. Fire purified the soul for the journey. Women were prominent in ship burials. At Oseberg, the 2 women were accompanied by elaborate textiles and a ceremonial wagon, suggesting they were priestesses or queens. At Gokstad, a woman was buried alongside the chieftain. Women could own ships and command respect in death. Even children received ship burials. At the Valsgärde cemetery in Sweden, a boy was buried in a small boat with weapons and a horse. These burials show that status was inherited. Even the youngest elites were sent off with full honors. The tradition spread to Iceland and the Faroe Islands. In Iceland, a ship burial at Valfjordur contained a man and a woman with a horse and a dog. The settlers carried the tradition with them, adapting it to their new homeland. Sacrificed animals weren't just pets. Horses were prized companions and dogs were guardians. The number of animals reflected wealth. At Ladby, the 11 horses were arranged in pairs, suggesting a ceremonial procession. The animals were killed at the burial site, their blood consecrating the ship. As Christianity spread, ship burials became rare. The church frowned on pagan practices. The last known ship burial in Scandinavia is from the 10th century, but the tradition didn't vanish entirely. It transformed into Christian burials with ship-shaped stone settings, a faint echo of the old ways. Today, ship burials captivate our imagination. They reveal a worldview where death was not an end, but a departure. The ship was the ultimate symbol of status, identity, and belief. And every burial tells a unique story, not just of how they died, but of how they lived. But Denmark also has its share. At Ladby, a 10th century ship held a chieftain with 11 horses and a dog. The ship was 21 meters long and the burial mound still stands. It's one of the best preserved ship burials in Scandinavia. Then there's the Tune ship, found in Norway. It held a man and his horse, but the ship was damaged by grave robbers. Still, it's one of the few ships with its mast still in place, showing how these vessels were prepared for the afterlife. Sweden's Valsgärde Cemetery has over 15 ship burials, spanning centuries. One held a warrior with his helmet, shield, and a horse. The ships were smaller, but the ritual was the same. It shows how widespread this practice was across Scandinavia. Gokstad's ship was 23 meters long and could hold 32 oarsmen. It was built for the sea, not just burial. The man inside was in his 40s, buried with 12 horses and 6 dogs. His ship was a symbol of his power as a chieftain. The Oseberg ship was more than a burial. It was a time capsule. The women had a bed with posts carved like animal heads, a tapestry showing a procession, and a bucket full of apples. These details reveal their daily life and beliefs about the afterlife. To understand the scale, imagine a modern reenactment. A team drags a replica ship from the water, digs a trench, and raises a mound. It takes days. For the Vikings, this was a community event, reinforcing bonds and displaying the deceased's status. Modern archaeology reveals ship burials weren't just for warriors. They were for high-status individuals, men, women, even queens. The ship carried you into eternity. That's the real story. Not just death, but how you lived.